take a call. Firstly, can I just say, I think we have seen Labour's true colours with regard to this piece of legislation. Not only are we seeing them clearly try to undermine a good piece of legislation that is going through the House to try and support what is going to be the largest sporting event that New Zealand has ever held. It's going to be a time when 4 billion people are going to be watching us, 2,000 media, and frankly it is actually quite embarrassing to have members opposite who sat in a select committee. They went through a reasonable process. Members on this side of the House have talked about that process, and then what's happened? They haven't put in a minority report. What has happened is they've got far too much time on their hands, and Mr Mallard has stirred them up, taking them down a little garden path. And my concern, Mr Speaker, is we've had a very, very clear process here. There was no minority report, and my colleague said it very well that we need to call members opposite for exactly what they're doing. They're filibustering, and they are showing a lack of support for New Zealand by not actually supporting this legislation. So we're very clear that this part two of the legislation is about setting up the authority, and we're seeing a lot of contradictions come from the other side as well. Yesterday they said that they supported the process around the establishment of the authority. In fact, Mr Mallard even said yesterday that he supported the fact that Mr McCulley was consulting with members opposite regarding that membership. But then we just heard from Mr Galloway that actually no, because of the provisions around urgent consents, actually it's Labour's position that they don't support the legislation at all. So there's complete contradictions coming from the other side of the House. We know what's happening here. We know that what this is about wasting New Zealand taxpayers' money, which we've just seen via an hour of filibustering, and that's not good for New Zealand, particularly at a time when we have had pretty hard economic times. Again, coming back to part two of the legislation, Mr Speaker, what we want to do is, on this side of the House, is be very clear that we're supportive of the authority that's being set up. It's a very reasonable process that has been undertaken around part two. There's a very clear process around the membership of the authority, both in terms of consulting with the Minister of Justice, the Minister for Economic Development, the Minister for the Environment, all elected people. And again, it comes back to some of the arguments that are being raised by the opposition regarding not having an urgent consents process whereby there's a power of veto by the Minister. We would rather, on this side of the House, have elected representatives be accountable rather than unelected people, and that comes to the core heart of a number of the discussions that have happened so far. So, Mr Speaker, I say to you, we on this side of the House support New Zealand, support the Rugby World Cup, support this legislation go through, compared to a Labour opposition who are filibustering, who are wasting the House's time, who don't support the Rugby World Cup, and who have lots of contradictions in terms of what they're saying. We're supportive of the Rugby World Cup, and I commend this legislation.